Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something kind of tricky, but really, really useful. We're digging into let's say, the mechanics of being effective professionally. Our sources today, they cover two areas that seem different, but, well, you'll see they're totally connected. First up, how to give advice, politely. And second, these little language tools, prefixes and suffixes that help you figure out complicated English words.
That's right. And our goal for you today is pretty straightforward, really. We want to give you the shortcuts, the actionable stuff you can use right away to feel more informed, more confident. We're aiming for those aha moments, like how do you give feedback without making someone defensive? And at the same time, how can you look at a technical word and instantly get a handle on what it means using these basic building blocks?
Yeah, it's about balancing that social skill, that grace, with being precise. Making sure your message actually lands, basically. That it's accepted, not just heard.
Exactly. And that really brings us to the core idea from all the research we looked at. In the workplace, especially when you're guiding someone or maybe correcting something, giving advice, the tone is just crucial. Yeah. Politeness isn't just nice to have, it's paramount. The actual words, the phrases you pick, they determine if you sound helpful or if you sound, critical or demanding.
Right, because if the whole point of advice is to help someone improve or fix something, then how you say it needs to help that happen, not get in the way.
Precisely. Can't create resistance right off the bat.
Okay, so let's dive right into the practical side. Advice usually comes up because there's a problem, right? Someone's slipping, or maybe a process isn't working. So we need ways to talk about these common issues without sounding, too strong or aggressive. We need to keep things, as the sources put it, in a low-threat conversational environment.
Yeah, that phrase, low-threat conversational environment, that's really key. Think about strong language, those commands like, do this or you must stop that. Yeah. Psychologically, what that does is it sets up a power dynamic, right? The speaker has all the power. But in most workplaces now, it's more about teams, collaboration.
Yeah.
That kind of hierarchy feels wrong. It just makes people defensive. So the idea is to shift from a command to a gentle suggestion, something conditional, lets the other person save face, maybe even choose to sort of own the solution.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, first common headache, this one drives managers crazy, lateness, habitual lateness.
Yeah.
If you just say, you must be on time for the 9 a.m. meeting, bam, instant conflict. So what do the sources say? What are the specific polite ways to handle this instead?
Well, the main idea is to wrap the advice in language that frames it as a potential help, not a punishment. The sources point to phrases using modals, those helping verbs, and soft suggestions. Like
what? Give me an example.
Okay, so you could try, maybe you should set an alarm reminder 10 minutes before the meeting. See? That word maybe, it just dials down the intensity immediately. Or maybe a bit more formal, it might be a good idea to plan your schedule earlier. Build in a buffer before that meeting.
It might be a good idea it feels objective, like this is generally good advice, not you personally are failing. But, okay, let me push back a bit. What if this isn't a one-off? What if they're late, like every week for months? Maybe you should start to sound a bit weak, like you're not really addressing it.
That's a really important point. It's about escalation. And yeah, the sources do touch on this. Gentle language doesn't mean ignoring the problem. Not at all. It's about using, let's say, psychological finesse. If it's chronic, the conversation needs to shift. Maybe to something like, why don't we try? Why don't we try a new system for a couple of weeks? You're still using a soft opener. Why don't we? But now you're adding accountability, a specific trial period. The language stays polite, but the approach gets more structured, more action-focused.
Okay, that's the nuance, right?
Right.
Let's switch to scenario 2. Someone's struggling with deadlines. This might not be about behavior, it could be workload, maybe organization skills. How do we offer suggestions here that are actually helpful, action-oriented, but don't sound like we're saying they're incompetent?
Yeah, good question. Here, the language often shifts a bit. Instead of just suggesting external things, it encourages them to think internally, find their own solutions. We use questions, specific questions, that have these action verbs in them. Try, ask, plan, organize.
Okay, give us the structures. What does that sound like in practice?
Well, a really effective starting point is often, have you tried breaking your tasks into smaller parts? I mean, that's just solid project management advice, right? Chunking things down. But phrasing it as, have you tried, assumes they're capable. Maybe they just haven't thought of this specific technique. It validates them first.
Right. So it feels like coaching, not criticism.
Exactly. Frames it constructively. Another one, especially if you suspect workload is the issue, is perhaps you could ask for some help from a colleague. Or maybe delegate some of the prep work. Using perhaps you could make asking for help sound normal, acceptable. Because, people often feel they have to do everything themselves. This shows empathy, suggests practical ways to share the load.
It's interesting how these phrases immediately make the advice feel more useful. You're offering tools, not just pointing out flaws. Okay, so let's pull it together. The sources seem to highlight 4 core phrases, kind of like the workhorses for gentle suggestions. What are they?
Right, these 4 are really versatile, good ones to just have in your back pocket. They work for almost any situation. One, why don't you talk to your supervisor about maybe restructuring the project timelines?
Okay.
2, how about we quickly review the progress together at the end of today?
Got it.
3, what if you focus just on the critical parts today, leave the rest for tomorrow?
Makes sense.
And 4, maybe you could. For example, maybe you could try using that new scheduling tool we talked about.
Yeah, those cover a lot of ground, from pretty direct, like, why don't you, to more open, like, what if you, Starting with one of these seems like a safe bet to soften even potentially difficult advice.
Definitely. And remember, this deep dive is about application, right? So if you see a colleague, say, reading their presentation straight off the slides we've all seen that don't say stop reading your slides, use one of these. How about maybe focusing on just 3 key points per slide? Or maybe you could use the slides more as visual backup. It's professional, it's kinder, and it actually tells them what to do instead. Actionable.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. We've talked about the soft skills, the strategy. But effective communication also needs precision, clarity. And often, especially in technical fields or complex discussions, we run into jargon, complex words. So we need to move from the strategy of communication to the mechanics of the language itself. We're going to dive into prefixes and suffixes, those like small but powerful word parts that change what a word means or how it's used.
Right. This is like getting the secret decoder ring for language. Honestly, understanding these bits is a huge shortcut. Think about it. You see a word you've never encountered before, maybe in a legal document or some technical report. If you can spot the prefix or suffix, you can often make a really good guess about the word's general meaning or its function. It boosts your reading speed, your comprehension, and definitely your confidence. It's huge.
Okay, let's break it down. Prefixes first. These are the bits added to the beginning of a word, and they change the core meaning, right? The sources pull out 5 that are super common in professional contexts.
Yeah, let's start with maybe the most basic but essential, meaning not simple, right? Like unhappy, but think professionally. Unprecedented, meaning not happened before. Or unaccountable, not having to answer for your actions. If your boss talks about unauthorized access, that immediately signals something wrong, it was not authorized.
Right, it's about negation, often complex negation.
Okay, next.
Next up is dis. This usually means opposite of or separation. Think conflict, we know disagree, but professionally, disconnect, the opposite of connection, or disrupt, to break apart the normal flow. If a plan is discontinued, you know it's the opposite of continued, it's stopped.
Okay, un is not, dis is opposite of. What's third?
Third is re, meaning, again, this one is all about repetition, review, doing something over, we know redo, rewrite, but think bigger, retrospective. Looking back again to analyze what happened or recalibrate, adjusting something again to get it right. If a team needs to regroup, they need to come together again.
Good one. Number 4. Fourth is pre, meaning before. Super relevant for planning, scheduling, anything about order and time. We know pre-meeting, prepay. But professionally, think preemptive, taking action before something anticipated happens. Or prerequisite, something required before you can do the next thing. If someone talks about precedent in a legal sense, pre tells you it's about something that came before and now sets a rule.
That's a great example, okay? And the 5th key prefix.
The 5th one is over, meaning too much. And this connects right back to our earlier discussion about workplace issues. We see overthink, overreact. And the big one we mentioned, overwork, working too much.
Ah, yeah, perfect tie-in. And you often see this prefix describing things that aren't great professionally, like overestimate, guessing too high, or oversight, which confusingly often means you failed to see something, you looked over it, but it implies too little attention in a way. But generally, over signals an excess, often negative.
Exactly. Okay, so that's prefixes. Now let's flip to the end of the word, suffixes. Suffixes are added after the root word. And they're amazing because they often change the word's job in the sentence, its grammatical function, like turning an action into a person or a quality into a thing.
Right. Our sources highlight 5 really common useful suffixes. What's the first one?
First, or. This usually means the person or thing doing the action. So work becomes worker, act becomes actor, invest becomes investor, turns the verb into the agent doing the verbing.
That's simple enough.
Next is asminous. This creates a noun that represents a state or a quality. It usually takes an adjective and makes it a noun. Kind turns into kindness, happy into happiness. Professionally, you might talk about the effectiveness of a campaign or the appropriateness of a response.
Okay, quality or state. Third suffix.
Third is able, meaning able to be or capable of being. This is all about possibility, feasibility. If a task is manageable, it's able to be managed. If information is actionable, you're able to take action on it. Crucial for business is this idea viable. Is it doable?
Very useful. Okay, number 4.
Number 4 is maybe the most important for our discussion today. Greation, or sometimes prelation. This suffix usually indicates an action, a process, or the result of an action. Think communication, implementation, negotiation, and, tying it all back, suggestion.
Ah, yes. Let's pause on that. That's perfect. The very word we're focusing on, suggestion, is built this way. The verb suggest plus the suffix suggestion. The word itself tells us we're talking about the process or the act of suggesting. That's neat.
Isn't it? It shows how these parts aren't random. They signal the word's function. Okay, the last common suffix on our list is soful, meaning full of. So helpful means full of help. Successful means full of success. Meaningful means full of meaning.
Right, so the payoff here is pretty clear, isn't it? If you, listening, see a word like, I don't know, reorganization, you break it down. Re means again, organize is the root. Greation means the process of. So it's the process of organizing again. You get the core meaning instantly without a dictionary. That's the confidence booster we're talking about, especially when things are moving fast.
Okay, so we've got the building blocks, gentle language principles, and how words themselves are built. Now let's put it all together in those higher stakes situations, using some more advanced ways to offer advice. And we really have to stress this again. In business English, politeness is like currency. It's how you build influence. Sounding rude or bossy or even accidentally passive-aggressive, it just tanks your effectiveness. So we need a more refined set of tools.
Yeah, the sources seem to suggest moving beyond just, maybe you should.
Yeah.
We need phrases that build more connection, show more thought. What are the sort of top 6 most nuanced structures the research recommends?
Okay, here's a list of 6 really good ones. Each has a slightly different flavor of politeness. 1, maybe you could, we know this one. Gentle, non-committal, good starting point.
Right.
2, you might want to. This one's a bit stronger, subtly, often good for like preventative advice, suggesting something to avoid a future problem. 3, how about still conversational, quick, leaves things open. 4, it would be a good idea too. This one states the benefit more clearly, but it's still framed as advice, not an order.
More objective, yeah.
5, have you thought about, this is great for suggesting something new they might not have considered.
Yep.
Shows high empathy, invites them to reflect.
Keep that one.
And 6, if I were you, this is the classic put yourself in their shoes approach. Softens almost any advice because it shows shared understanding, uses a hypothetical.
That you might want to.
Yeah.
Number 2, I can see that being really useful. Like if you see a colleague about to send an email with a typo in the client's name, you don't, maybe you could proofread. You need something quick but polite. Hey, you might want to just double check the spelling of the name before you hit send. Perfect.
Exactly. It's a soft warning, right? Framed as helpfulness, not as you're being careless. Okay, let's try these out. Let's run through 2 common, pretty complex workplace scenarios.
All right, scenario 1. Managing focus when you have way too many meetings. The classic calendar Tetris problem. Everyone feels this one. The goal here is finding structural solutions.
Okay, let's imagine an employee comes to their manager. They're frustrated, can't get any deep work done, just meeting after meeting. The manager needs to offer real solutions, politely.
Okay, I'll be the employee. Look, I'm really struggling. It feels like my whole morning is just bouncing between half-hour check-ins. I need solid blocks of time to actually think and work on the big projects, but I can never seem to find more than an hour free.
As the manager, using the advanced structures. Okay, I hear you. This sounds really frustrating, and it's actually a really common problem. We definitely need to figure out how to protect your focus time. Have you thought about actually blocking out specific focus time slots in your calendar, like maybe 2 hours every afternoon? We could even label it deep work so people know it's protected.
Yeah, I've tried that a bit, but honestly, I worry people will just schedule meetings over it anyway. It happens all the time.
That's a fair concern. Well, you might want to proactively communicate with your core team about why that time is blocked. Explain it's essential for hitting our project deadlines. Also, maybe it would be a good idea to take a look at all those recurring meetings you mentioned. How about we sit down for 15 minutes later today, pull up your calendar, and see if any of those meetings can be combined? Or maybe delegate attendance for some of them.
See, that works. The manager didn't just say, fix your calendar. They used those polite phrases, have you thought about, you'd be a good idea to, how about to suggest concrete actions? Block time, communicate, review meetings. It feels collaborative.
Right. And that last suggestion, combining meetings, leads us nicely to a specific vocabulary term the sources highlight, time batching. That's essentially the technique the manager is suggesting there.
Okay, let's define that clearly. What is time batching exactly? Why is it such a buzzword now?
So time batching is basically grouping similar tasks together to do them all at once. It boosts efficiency because you're not constantly switching mental gears. Like, instead of checking email every 10 minutes, you batch it, check and respond only twice a day, say at 11:30 and 4:30. It's gained traction because people realize how much focus you lose every time you switch tasks. There's a cognitive cost. So talking about time batching sounds more strategic, more informed than just saying grouping your tasks.
And linguistically, the sources point out that batch works as both a noun, I have a batch of reports to review, and a verb, I need to batch these calls. Knowing both shows flexibility.
Good point. Okay, let's move to the second scenario, which is much more sensitive. Handling workplace stress and potential burnout. This requires maximum compassion, the softest touch. Even if the advice is critical, like take time off, demanding it can backfire.
Let's start with the word itself, burnout.
Right. As we kind of touched on, it's a heavy word. It's not just feeling tired. The sources define it clearly as extreme physical or mental exhaustion caused by prolonged overwork or stress. It's recognized as a serious occupational issue.
So when someone comes to you, maybe they're visibly upset, saying, I think I'm burned out, our response needs to be purely supportive. What kind of advice structures work best here?
The tone has to be incredibly caring. Phrases that clearly put their well-being first instead of, you need to take time off, which can sound like another demand, use that softer, empathetic structure. If I were you, I'd seriously consider taking a few days off right away, even just a long weekend, to completely disconnect and reset.
Yeah, the if I were you really helps there. It creates solidarity.
Definitely. And another key piece is often reducing workload. Again, don't command, suggest gently. It would be a good idea to look at your task list and see what can be delegated. Because often, someone experiencing burnout feels like they can't let go of anything.
Right. So let's quickly define delegate again in this context.
To delegate means assigning a task or responsibility to someone else, usually someone more junior or with more capacity. Crucially, when advising someone burned out to delegate, you need to frame it not as them failing, but as a necessary step for the team's health and their own recovery. It's strategic, not a weakness.
Okay, but what if they say, I don't even know what I could delegate?
Then you use that reflective problem-solving structure. Have you tried maybe sitting down with your manager? You could talk through your workload and together identify, say, the 3 most critical things only you can do right now, and see what else could potentially be shifted to someone else, even temporarily. It encourages them to seek support and structure, makes it less overwhelming.
And that reminder about tone is so vital here. The difference between a caring, maybe you should try to rest and delegate a few things, versus a harsh, you must rest and delegate now, Debbie. It's night and day. The gentle way is the only way they'll likely hear and accept the help they need.
Absolutely. In a crisis like burnout, empathy and gentleness are non-negotiable.
Wow, okay. That was a really deep exploration. We covered the art of the gentle suggestion and the science of word parts. A lot to absorb. So let's do a quick wrap-up. Let's condense the key takeaways, especially the vocabulary. Think of this as your quick reference sheet.
Good idea. Let's nail down these critical terms, focusing on their meaning and how you'd actually use them.
Okay, let's start with the words describing the problems we often face at work.
First, overwork. Pretty simple. Working too much. Remember that prefix over? You might say, he's clearly suffering from overwork. His manager needs to redistribute some tasks.
Right. Then there's deadline. That fixed date or time something has to be finished. Example, we can't miss the Friday deadline for the client proposal.
And the big one, burnout. That state of extreme exhaustion from long-term stress and overwork. Example, the team lead recognized the signs of burnout in her staff and insisted they take their vacation time.
Okay, now the solution. Words. The actions.
Delegate. Assigning work to someone else. Example. To manage the increased workload, she had to learn to delegate effectively to her assistant.
And time batching, grouping similar tasks to do them efficiently. Example, implementing time batching for emails and calls really helped me reclaim my focus during the day.
Exactly. And finally, those structural and language terms we dissected.
Suggestion, an idea offered for consideration. Remember, suggest plus inaffection. Example, thanks for the input, that's a really helpful suggestion.
Prefix, the part at the start of a word changing the meaning, like un or re. Example, knowing the prefix pre means before helps you understand words like preview or prepay.
And suffix, the part at the end of a word often changing its job, like exmatness or able. Example, the suffix "er" usually tells you it's a person who does something, like a teacher or a writer.
Nailing these terms, and more importantly, the suggestion structures we practiced, it really will make your communication sound more natural, more confident, more effective. You'll be clearer, but also kinder and more strategic in how you interact. That combination is powerful. #outro.
So there you have it. A pretty comprehensive deep dive today. We looked at smoothing out workplace bumps with gentle advice, we decoded words using prefixes and suffixes, and we practiced those advanced, polite ways to make suggestions.
And really, if you zoom out, the big takeaway from all the source material is this. Getting advice well isn't just about what you say. It's maybe even more about the how. It comes down to tone, respect, kindness. If you approach it gently, your advice actually has a chance of landing and making a difference.
That emphasis on tone and respect is huge, something for all of us to keep in mind. But we want to leave you with one final thought, something practical to keep building on this. A little challenge, maybe.
Yeah, think about this. The very next time you encounter a word you don't know, maybe reading an article, a work email, listening to something, don't just immediately look it up. Pause.
Before you grab the definition, try this first. Look for a prefix or a suffix you recognize. Ask yourself, okay, I know re means again, or able means able to be. How does knowing just that little piece help me make an educated guess about the whole word's meaning, even if the root is unfamiliar?
Doing that little mental exercise regularly, it really sharpens your ability to figure things out on the fly. It builds that linguistic intuition. It ensures you keep learning and growing your vocabulary and confidence long after you finish listening today.
So keep practicing those polite suggestions. Keep decoding those words. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. Farewell for now.
Goodbye, everyone. Take care.